Wow, it's time to talk New York Jets football following the 2022 NFL draft. And yes, all I can say is wow. On paper, without question, the best draft in the history of this franchise since I've been following them. But again, as I said, on paper. Jan Levine joining me. Jan, we had a jolly old good time on Thursday night. We did multiple shows because of the trade back into the first round. And what a trade back into the first round it was. And we hear the next day that Trader Joe is actually trying to trade back into the first round again to get Brees Hall. And instead ended up with a better deal in this on day two by being able to wait patiently and pick him up in round two. So I've never seen anything like it. It's just there's nothing to complain about as far as I'm concerned. This is awesome, and now these guys just gotta live up to the hype, stay healthy, and let's hope as fans we never have to see one of these early round drafts for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, as we were texting, right? Quality over quantity was clearly what Joe Douglas prioritized in terms of the draft. Clearly, I remember the 2000 draft when we got Sean Ellis and a bunch of and Pennington and Becton. That was probably, you could argue the best draft in Jets history or one of the best drafts in Jets history, given how those guys kind of panned out. But I agree. I mean, on paper, clearly hard to argue. I mean, as we'll go through. For me, I would have loved maybe one or two more things, but that's really, pushing the envelope there in terms of what I wanted to come out of draft. We knew there was a lot of needs. I would say from the draft, we probably checked the boxes on almost all of them, except maybe two coming out of the draft. I'd say linebacker, and we can go through that. A couple of guys who we both wanted. I would say maybe safety. Granted, the only time I think the Jets got sniped was the picks before they took Max Mitchell with the guy the Ravens took. Well, I do think the Jets may have gone after the offensive lineman would have been a guy they may have had slightly higher on their board. But, clearly what we saw, if you can believe what Douglas said, they got three out of the guys they had ranked in their top 8 on the board in the first round with getting Johnson at 26. They had Brees Hall supposedly way up there on the draft board. And, it came to them to be able to get him in the second round, not the first round, which helps in terms of contracts down the road as well, in terms of cap hit, etc., and in terms of how long you have a player. Then you got yourself a tight end who, as we've talked hockey before, for those who know who John Tavares is, in the picture of him with the Toronto Maple Leafs blanket on his bed. You have the picture of Rutland with the Jets and, going crazy. A local Lindenhurst boy, not that far from me on Long Island, who gets to play for his hometown team. And you look at kind of what they added even later on, the defensive end they added who's got the upside. The offensive tackle is a swing guy. So, Douglas swung for the fences, kind of probably did better than maybe even he expected to do.
Oh yeah.
And clearly there's optimism, as you say, though, on paper. So clearly it's cautious optimism right now until we see how it pans out. But on paper, clearly definitely what looks to be one of the better drafts in Jets history.
Yeah, and no question, there's a lot of good fortune that comes in to a draft like that. It has to. There's no way that they expected Jermaine Johnson to last that long. So if just anything happens that would normally take place, Jermaine Johnson's not there. And so they just don't even have a chance to get him. So, and then again, maybe Brees Hall is taken. Maybe the Houston, if that's the team that the Jets wanted to move ahead of, maybe they make a deal and they get Brees Hall. So there's a whole bunch of different factors, but no question, it's a combination of hard work, skill, and luck. And the Jets had all the luck in the world in this draft to get the players that they wanted, and they also had the skill to make sure that they landed these elite players. And by all accounts and by everybody's grades, clearly one of the big winners on draft night, and they're not done. They made some more signings as they always do. There's always going to be a player or two that the rookie free agent the team will sign, and that might make the team. Several of them will make the practice squad, so we'll go over that a little bit later as well. But yes, it was just fantastic, and even though they were done pretty early, I was already worn out by everything positive that was happening. I was completely fine with the fact that I didn't have to worry about turning the TV on and looking for some pick in the 6th round or 7th round. So, and yes, as we talked about last year and this year, this had to be a quality over quantity draft, because last year and the last couple of years that Joe was here was all quantity. So sooner or later, you can't push all these guys on the roster. Sooner or later, you got to get really good impact players, and that's what his objective was. And it appears to have worked out. So,
Yep.
It's awesome.
See what happens. Look, I mean, I think, as you said, on paper, we went in with several needs. I would say wide receiver was one.
Well, let's start with the first pick. Gardner in the secondary.
Yeah.
So we'll flash him up here, and he goes first. And as we said the other day, what this does to the backfield, it now pushes everybody down a peg. So now you have Gardner along with DJ Reed and Bryce Hall as 3 outside starting caliber corners, Gardner being a shutdown type, and Michael Carter obviously in the slot, and Guidry in the slot, and Eccles, who can play kind of both. But that just shows you all the depth now, including Jason Pittick, that this team has at corner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we both like the Reed pick a lot. We thought that he was probably going to be their number 1 corner. Now you get to slide him down a notch.
Gardner, mean?
Well, first it was Reed, right, when they signed him.
Oh, you signed,
depends on what happened, right?
And he was only 25 years old.
Right. So now you get Gardner, who basically slots in probably as your number 1, hopefully, shutdown corner. You also talk about the attitude, or quote unquote the swagger these guys bring in. Clearly was evident from talking to these guys. They seem to get what's been lacking in New York for a while in terms of that capacity and ability to make a difference. They all talked about being difference makers. I mean, look, I particularly don't always love the rhetoric or the conversations that are done by some of these guys, but Gardner clearly was trying to put his best foot forward in terms of the remarks and the conversations he had. He clearly entered in the building on Friday, saying he was getting a chance to looking forward to working with Wilson. Wilson saying the same, both of them making each other better in practice. Iron sharpens iron. All the comments that you heard, but you have Gardner, you have Reed, as you mentioned, you have Hall, who's going to be interesting what's going to be with him now, because I thought he was playing extremely well for parts of last year and really started to build on some of the success he had his rookie year. And then you have Eccles and Pinnock, and it's nice to actually have depth at the quarterback.
Because players are going to get hurt.
Right. And safety is still, in my opinion, one of those things we talked about in the draft that we thought they may address, that they didn't. There are still some free agents out there. A certain guy by the name of Honey Badger. There's one guy whose name has been thrown about for a bit. I don't see that happening, but there are still guys, because I do think if there is a weakness on the defense right now, given where they came out of the draft, that's one of the 2 areas of weakness that still needs to have some remediation.
Well, again, a lot of it has to depend on the development of Ashton Davis and the health of LaMarcus Joyner. But yes, I'm sure they're going to have to, and a veteran, signing a veteran makes a lot of sense. Now, this also depends on how much they really trust Elijah Riley in case there's an injury. Do they build, because it's one thing to have a cutesy story with Elijah Riley out there and getting an opportunity, but let's keep in mind he was getting an opportunity playing with one of the worst defenses in the league last year. So that's a big difference. But yes, I think adding a veteran safety, and unless there's like a bargain basement deal for Ty Matthew, which I doubt, you go out and you get yourself one of these veterans. And I thought it was interesting that Joe Douglas mentioned that. He said, yeah, we're obviously going to take a look at the depth charts. We're going to find out who gets cut after the draft. And so I would think safety, linebacker, and maybe even offensive tackle would be the 3 positions, and especially right tackle, because I just get the sneaking suspicion that with about 3 or 5 veteran offensive tackles still on the market, that he might just go out there, depending, and again, not early, but he might just, see what, take the pulse of Becton when he comes into camp, see how he's looking and all that kind of stuff. And obviously take a look at Adoga and everybody else, and feel whether or not they need late in the process, late in the summer, to add a veteran right tackle. And that's possible.
Yeah. I mean, they got the swing tackle of Mitchell in the draft in one of their last 2 picks, the pick 111. Like I said, I thought the guy who went to the Ravens from Australia may have been the guy that they may have wanted. Yep. The guy that they thought they
we talked about that.
I thought, yeah. Yep. And we thought that maybe the guy, the big guy, 6'8". I thought that may be the guy they wanted to get one pick before them, I think. But the other piece of the puzzle, the only thing, look, it's funny. As I caught up on Saturday, while reading the draft, and I'm looking, going, Nakobe Dean slipped. Nakobe Dean slipped
it's
again.
Amazing.
And I'm thinking they're going, right? And I'm thinking they're going, God, I wish Douglas had like another pick somewhere. Because he's probably would have been sitting there itching like 101 if he had another pick.
He could have done it if he really wanted
to trade up. And again, honestly, if you ask me, if they could have somehow gotten him, to me, that would have, we talk about checking all the boxes, him or maybe the kid Smith maybe from Penn State as a linebacker, because that's one of the areas besides safety that we both thought they needed to address in the draft was a linebacker. And I thought Dean would have been a really nice fit given the scheme and given the talent level, especially if the rumor is he is healthy. And
Sure.
the rumors that, he wasn't going to be ready for camp are not true. But that would have been the guy I would have loved to have, because you would have gotten him. I mean, that draft would have been an A++ in my opinion. I mean, it's an A and potentially an A+, but obviously you can't fill all the needs, and there are still veterans that are out there who I think they may try to sign, because you and I both talked about heading in to day 2. Dean sitting at 36. At 38, we thought that he might be the guy.
Sure.
They looked for 38 before they moved up to 36 to get Hall.
It's possible that the Jets, because he's going to be a match with maybe a third of the teams in the league because of his size. And I have no idea if the Jets are one of those teams that feel that he would work out with their defense based on his size limitations. Let's also keep in mind that once it got past the first round or two, didn't think that they were going to add a linebacker, because this is what they did last year. They went in the middle to late rounds and they added Sherwood and Nazrul Dean, and they get the bonus with Quentin Williams. So they have those types of young developing players already on their team, which is why it wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to add a veteran in free agency. And let's also understand that this defense is going to play a lot of, you're probably going to see more two linebackers, 5 defensive backs with the 4 linemen than you're going to see like a standard 4-3.
Which is where I think you're going to see Hall play a lot of. That's where I think they try to slot him in and take advantage of his ability to move up and down the lineup. Because, again, he's too talented to keep on the bench if you're going to go with Gardner and with Reed.
Yeah, sure.
So I think that's where you kind of see Hall maybe step in if they go like a 4-2-5 kind of a scheme or something along those lines, or mix and match. But like I said, Dean would have been a nice add, in my opinion, because he potentially could have been a 3-down linebacker and would have lengthened the depth. Because, again, while you added guys last year, Dean was a guy who a lot of people thought was going to go in the middle part of that first round. And the quote-unquote injury risk kept pushing him down and pushing him down and pushing him down and pushing him down. So if you ask me, like I said, if there was one guy who I really wanted them to get that they didn't, that was the guy.
Okay, now taking a look at their second pick, the Jets then tabbed Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. So as far as the wide receiver situation is right now, it's really a complete group if Denzel Mims steps up and becomes the player the Jets envisioned when they took him in 2020. Because now you've got, and I know there's a lot of talk about Garrett Wilson being, well, he's your number 1 guy now, and he's the only I heard people going, he's the only real pure deep threat you got, which is a bunch of bunk. I mean, Elijah Moore and Corey Davis are both capable of being deep threats with this offense. What's going to make it so great is that they're all equally going to be dangerous. They're all equally going to get touches. Garrett Wilson is just not going to come out there and get like 90 receptions while Elijah Moore and Corey Davis get 50 each. It's not going to happen. But he makes this offense that much more dangerous. You throw in Berrios. And again, we just got to keep our fingers crossed that Denzel Mims finally steps up and has a big season. And if he does, it's the best receiving core that we have seen in this franchise for I can't even remember when.
Yeah, I mean, from a depth perspective, right? Look, I'll go back to the days of Toon and Walker and guys like that, where they had really good receivers also. And then when they made the run, right, we have Brandon Marshall and Santonio Holmes. But this now, you kind of talk about Davis, Moore, Wilson, Berrios, and if Mims, right, that's 5 guys right there, who all of which you could be, honestly enough, you could go 5 wide at times. I mean, they could, empty backfield 5 wide. It's also going to allow Berrios, right? You want to scheme him and take him out of the backfield as a slot receiver and create mismatches. that gives LaFleur the ability, presuming the offensive line can hold up. Right, a lot of this is twofold. One, the offensive line holding up, and two, also it's look, a lot of burden we'll talk about on Zach Wilson. Right, the ball literally is now in your court, Mr. Wilson. You have a lot of the weapons. You need to now show that you can take advantage of them. But it gives LaFleur potentially the ability to really scheme and put some interesting, funky schemes on what we've seen in the past based upon the talent level that's around. And granted, look, Wilson still got to adapt to the NFL. We also know there's going to be injuries and guys that get banged up, as we saw last year with Davis getting banged up and more times and other guys getting injured. So we're quite cognizant that, look, we're all talking about on paper right now. But on paper, they now have a lot more weapons. You look at the variance between weapons last year from Wilson and this year for Wilson, and it's almost night and day.
Well, again, that's because that's if, like you said, if everybody stays healthy, because they had the same players minus Wilson, but everybody was hurt. But that's why it's important for Mims to step up, because if he doesn't step up and one guy gets hurt or two guys get hurt like last year, then it's back to where we were last year. But what's an advantage for us is that we have now tight ends and we have running backs who can catch the ball to the backfield. Next up, it went Jermaine Johnson. And again, we talked about the trade up, which was awesome to get him. And Jermaine Johnson, and really we could kind of talk about Clemens as well here. But Jermaine Johnson and Clemens now, you talk about depth. And this is why we knew the edge rusher was going to be so important. Because not only did they go out and get Johnson, but they went out and got Michael Clemens as well. So you have now Johnson and Lawson on the outside with Clemens, Martin, Huff. I have no idea what's going on with Vinny Curry. It doesn't matter at this point. But this is what you need to have to if you are going to have a defense that Robert Saleh wants. You have to have pass rushers both inside and outside, which also, and I get a kick out of hearing some writers, for some reason, not understanding that John Franklin Myers is always more of a defensive tackle than he was a defensive end. So yes, now they got a little lesson in that because the coach basically said that much, yet we've known it for the past 2 years. This gives John Franklin Myers the opportunity to move back inside where he belongs, and that straightens up the entire defensive line.
Yeah, so interesting. Johnson clearly has a personality. I don't think there's any doubt. Granted, look, his story where he bounced from, community college to, I think it was Georgia, then he bounced to Florida State, if I remember correctly, from the bounce. Right, last year was the 1 year he put it all together, and some people are making him out to be a one-year wonder. Part of that will tell, but at 26 and given the talent base and the upside there, and look, the Jets, as we heard, tried to trade up starting at 15 to get him. So he clearly was a major target, right? And we talked about on Thursday night. I said to you, hey, if it gets around 2023, maybe they start looking at for some reason he keeps slipping and slipping and slipping. And sure enough, it went all the way to 26 before they finally found a trade partner in Tennessee. And fortunately, he was there. So clearly he knows the team targeted him. Clearly knows the team was after him. One of the things we talked about a while ago was the Senior Bowl effect, right? They picked a lot of guys where they got a chance to coach and see play up close and personal in your Senior Bowl, right? There's pros and cons. Some of them could be recency bias, where they were impacted or influenced by what they saw. Some of it is they got to see guys up close and personal and maybe see the talent level that may have been there that may not have been shown during the year. But one of the things that more impressed me even more than the tackles for loss is the number of tackles from Johnson, right? It looks like a guy who could be a three-down player.
He's an elite run defender.
Right. He doesn't shirk his responsibility against the run, but he also has the speed. And look, Clemens, the issue with him is clearly off the field. Not on the field, but off the field, right? And the viewpoint seems to be that they're hoping that what they have around him enables him to potentially surround him with the type of support that he's going to need to hopefully remediate some of the issues. And granted,
but let's keep this in mind, which is very interesting. For a guy that has that red flag for the gun arrest and the marijuana arrest, this is a 2-time team captain. All right? So let's keep that in mind. This is not a guy that doesn't know how to be a leader. This is just somebody that's a kid and probably just got mixed up with the wrong people.
Well, what is he? He's 25 though, right?
He'll be 25 when the season begins.
Right. So he's not a kid
no,
anymore.
He's not.
Right? You can't use that argument at 25, right? Either look.
This is what happened in the past, though, and they obviously feel confident that
he'll come with a clean slate. right? The coaching staff's viewpoint. So you'll love this one. I didn't even tell you. So I'm listening to WFAN in New York today, and some guys go, if Robert Saleh doesn't do it this year, I don't know if he's the right coach. I'm like, guys, can you walk it back a little bit? First year last year, he needs to show more passion. He needs to show more emotion. Now, granted, you love to see what he showed when we saw the videos of them signing guys, right? Of what happened, right? But last year was his first year as a coach. He admitted he was going to take that step back to be more of a CEO type, right? To realize now, part of it maybe he goes, look, I need to manage differently. I need to kind of coach differently. I need to oversee differently. It's a matter of him finding that balance, when to show that emotion and when not to. He was a first-year head coach in New York City. He's not like buttoned up like Todd Bowles. You see some of the personality that came out. I'm less concerned about him than others. I think he's going to be fine as a coach. I think we got Ulbricht as a defensive coordinator who I think is going to be fine. They've added talent around him. Clemens was a guy who, in some prognosticators, they viewed him as the sleeper on the defensive line. And the Jets, look, maybe he probably would have gone earlier if it wasn't for the off-the-field problems. And who knows what's going to happen there. But at 117, it's sure as heck a worthwhile risk to take on a guy with the talent base of that. And all these guys, as you see, are leaders on their teams, as you mentioned. And that is a Joe Douglas hallmark when he looks for guys to bring in.
And that's why you grab guys like this later in the draft, and you try to you're definitely taking a chance, but that's okay. This is exactly the area of the draft where you can take a chance, especially at a position where the Jets have already some pretty good depth. And if this kid turns out, then they've got excellent depth. Okay, now we talked about let's now bring up Breece Hall, because Breece Hall was a little bit of a surprise, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the way that the draft was working out, and then you take a look at what the Jets have at running back. We knew the Jets were going to add another running back. We figured third, fourth round. But now all of a sudden, here's Breece Hall staring right in front of your face, and you know that you desperately need a really good number two. Not just, anybody, but you need a solid number two. So what they gave up to get this kid, to me, was a steal. He could turn out, we all know how talented he is. He's definitely, I agree with Joe Douglas when he said he's a top 20 talent, because he is a top 20 talent. He was on my board in that area overall. It's a tremendous, I was saying for the past few weeks, I don't want to see him with the Bills. I don't want to see him with the Chiefs. Never thinking that the Jets were going to get a chance at him. So I just figured after what happened last year with Etienne that they were going to wait until the third or fourth round. But now it's a year later. They're able to put some other pieces with their other positions. And this gave them the opportunity to go a little bit out of maybe their comfort zone and go to with a skill position that wasn't exactly a major need. But hey, man, we can get the best running back in the draft. Let's go out and get him.
So a couple things. So as we know from where LaFleur came from, the Niners love mixing and matching their backs, right? A different back led them in rushing almost every single year the last 3 years. That is a 49er hallmark under Shanahan and LaFleur, right? So now LaFleur gets the same type of thing where you can mix and match and use the running backs. B, to me, this is as a lot of people reported it, and it's a perfect analogy, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. You have two guys. You can wear down a defense. You can mix and match. You can move guys in and out. You can play both guys at the same time. The only knock I'd say on Hall is the fact that I saw is he needs to get better at the pass blocking to become a full 3-down back, which is one of the things they need to work on with him. Carter's a little undersized, but you see the explosiveness that he has. So to basically compare a 1A and a 1B, you can wear down defenses. You can allow Wilson to have a strong running attack, hopefully. Both guys can hopefully catch the ball out of the backfield. Gives him more weapons. Look, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a no-brainer, but Mr. Coleman, he'll be back. He'll probably be there, but Ty Johnson is probably gone. Kareem
I wouldn't say Ty Johnson's going to be gone.
Kareem is gone.
No, because he fills a role. His role is a third down. His role is a third down back.
I don't know if you're going to have 5 running backs, though.
What do you? Okay, well, I'm not so sure LaMichael Pirines going to beat out Ty Johnson, though.
Right. So one of those may not be there. Let's put it that way.
I think right now, because just of what you said, I don't think they're going to trust Breece Hall to be a third down back. I think Breece Hall will get more carries early. I think Michael Carter will get the second/third. And I think Ty Johnson will probably be the main third down back, where Tevin Coleman is probably going to be used more as a guy that they can just plug in anywhere because he's a veteran.
Right. We'll see. But again, it lengthens their running backs. It makes them much more dangerous at the running back attack. And you couple that with what they've done, obviously, a wide receiver. Now I'm sure we're going to get into what they did at tight end. And clearly they're a much more diversified and dangerous attack than they were a year ago.
Yep. And Jeremy Ruckert, the hometown kid, the family of Jet fans. That's pretty awesome to see. You love that. And now, after acquiring CJ Azuma and Tyler Conklin, and we talked about it when they did it, that this did not mean that the Jets were done trying to find more talented tight ends that could help them in the passing game. Now, Ruckert is not going to be that guy at this point. He has the ability to be that guy. It's going to take him a couple of years, but that's okay. You have Azuma and you have Conklin. I'm going to be interested to see exactly what they also feel about Kenny Yeboah, because he's going to have a hard time making the team. Maybe they stash him on the practice squad again, because I think they like the versatility of Trevon Wesco. So I think he's going to make the team. So that'll be an interesting debate for training camp. But you got a kid that can block. You got a kid that when he seems to get the opportunity to catch the ball, he's got tremendous hands. The grit, the desire, the blocking. It's a great acquisition, and the tight end room. It's just amazing how much talented it has become after what we've had to deal with the last several seasons.
Absolutely. I mean, look, getting Uzoma brings another leader into the room, right? And we kind of heard that when he signed. Getting Conklin makes them much more talented, and then Ruckert is the guy. Look, Jet fan his whole life. Wanted to be a Jet, clearly wanted to be a Jet. I mean, I can tell you there was articles in New York Newsday going a month back, basically talking about the tight end, the local boy who maybe could end up with the Jets, and to see it happen and the reaction from him and his family and them adding one of the top tight ends in the market, especially at 101, the guy was probably expected to go 20, 25 picks earlier, is pretty nice value as well.
Okay, then last player that they drafted on offense was Max Mitchell, and this is not a surprise. We knew they were going to add another tackle, and this is a kid that needs basically a redshirt season. He needs to bulk up. He's got to get stronger, and that's what this pick is about. This is why we just mentioned that it wouldn't be surprising if the Jets added a veteran free agent at some point, because Mitchell is not going to be competing for any sort of playing time this year. He's a guy that is just going to sit there at the bottom of the pecking order and using this season to get bigger and just more experience and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's an interesting pick where they got him. He has high upside, and it's now giving them a little bit more depth to go along with Chuma Edoga, who we know can play. But let's keep in mind, they also had other young guys from last year. We'll see how they progress. Parker Ferguson, Grant Hermans, those guys. But overall, they're still lacking one more veteran tackle, I believe, as insurance. And we just hope that they don't have to go out and sign one. We just hope that Becton finally gets it done.
Yeah, and I want to go back and just take a quick look, and that's what I'm looking at. So the guy who I was talking about is Daniel Falelli, who is the big offensive lineman out of Minnesota, that the Ravens drafted before the Jets drafted Mitchell. So I think that's the guy, 6'8", guy who's got, I thought that may be the guy the Jets may ended up wanting to get. Look, Mitchell they like because of his versatility. He can swing between both sides. Guy who clearly needs to get stronger. He places the kid, I think it was Clark, who unfortunately got injured, hurt his neck. It was a guy the Jets had not major hopes for, but a guy they thought also could be a depth kind of an offensive lineman who got hurt last year in camp, who ended up unfortunately having to retire. So we knew, as we said, they'd end up getting an offensive lineman. The only question was when. They had a shot probably where they took Ruckert, but they probably thought Ruckert was too much value to pass up at that point in time. So they ended up waiting to like 111. They took Ruckert at 101, and then in between that, obviously, they ended up taking Mitchell at 111. Like I said, they may have wanted the guy that Baltimore got, but they got a guy who they not say high hopes for, but a guy who they view could be a guy who can be a plug-in guy periodically to provide them some depth if they need it. But we also knew, as you said, there's some guys on the market that are right now that are free agents. Still doesn't preclude them. I'm sure when we finish the draft, we'll talk for a couple minutes on the comments that Salah had made regarding Becton and kind of get into that a little bit. But, that left them with one more pick left, which they used at 117 that we talked about to take Clemens, and then hands washed, didn't trade up, didn't try to trade a pick next year to get back into the draft. They were pretty comfortable with the haul that we made, as we talked about quality over quantity based upon the trading up, they moved a lot of the later picks that they had in order to move up earlier in rounds to be able to grab some of the guys they grabbed in the first couple of rounds of the draft.
All right, so yeah, it's going to be interesting to find out what happens with Becton when he does return at whatever point. I'm sure it's going to be right after his girlfriend has their child. Then he'll come into camp, but we'll monitor that as soon as the as soon as the involuntary period comes in, and he has no choice, but he has to show up. So we'll see how that works out. And I just look. At this point, they didn't go out and sign or draft a top tackle. So does that mean that they have a lot of confidence in Udoga, or like we said, are they thinking more along the lines of they didn't get the right tackle that they felt? Because keep in mind, we don't know what happens if Gardner gets drafted third, say, instead of Stingley. We have no idea what happens. Same thing if Garrett Wilson gets drafted before they get an opportunity to take him. Do the Jets then turn their attention to a tackle instead? We don't know. It's still possible. I have no idea what their thinking process was, but I think we'll find that out. I think pretty soon. I think we'll hear things at camp. Robert Saleh doesn't. I know he tries to with the coach speak regarding players like Becton, but I think we've started to get a little familiar with how he really feels about a player, which is, and he didn't even have to give us any confusion with what he said earlier today, or was it yesterday? I can't remember, regarding Becton. Come on. I mean, now he's basically let the cat out of the bag as far as what he feels about Becton. And now the kid just has to wake up and hopefully, become the player that they envisioned. But I can't imagine that they're going to still risk it because he could get hurt. And then unless they're fully committed to Chuma Udoga, at some point they might go out and get themselves a right tackle. It all depends on who we're talking about, because they're not going to get someone like Eric Fisher or someone like that just to come in and be a backup. So that they're only going to sign a guy if that guy is going to be a starter for him, the way Morgan Moses was for him last year.
Yeah, I mean, look, he pretty much threw the gauntlet down. I wouldn't say gauntlet, but he basically threw a challenge across the bow to Becton, right? I mean, they're making the comments of we want you here. We understand why you're not here, but we'll pretty much give you all the support that you need. We'll take care of you. That's, again, part of it is the mental aspect, right? And we don't know how everything that's gone on has impacted Becton mentally. I think we have a decent sense based upon things that have gone on, because clearly we view it as things haven't transpired as optimally as they'd like. Him getting hurt, I'm sure he's seen everybody can say they don't read the newspapers or listen, but I'm sure he heard all of the comments that were made about him, that he's dogging it, that he's not trying to get back, that he's overweight, that he struggled, that the jury's out on him in terms of his future, all those things. And you don't know necessarily how it impacted him mentally, which has taken on almost as much as a priority now from a physical perspective as the mental aspect. But Saleh, I think, is trying to kind of throw him, I wouldn't say a life vest, but saying, hey, we kind of have your back. You're still a key part of this organization. We want you here. When you get here, we'll make sure we take care of you, is I think what he was saying. Maybe not expressed as well as it potentially could have been, because it came across more of a challenge than anything else. But I do think he was trying to say, hey, you're still a key part of this team, and you're welcomed back anytime you come back, that we're going to treat you as such.
Yeah, that works out, because that is going to be a huge part of this team when you take a look at what they've done in free agency and the draft to pencil in depth and holes and all that kind of stuff. To me, the biggest depth issue they have right now is at tackle. That is the biggest depth issue. Even if Chuma Udoga could be a solid right tackle starter for them, there's nothing behind Chuma Udoga. So one guy gets hurt and you're in big trouble. So we'll see how they handle that. Then came free agency, and it's still ongoing as far as the signing of the rookies. And there are 3 notable rookies that were signed. Now, the linebacker DQ Thomas from Middle Tennessee State, does it look like, it wasn't a top prospect, didn't have a great college career, but apparently you read that the Jets gave him what, $130,000 bonus?
$130,000 according to Tom Pelissero. They gave him $130,000 guaranteed.
Okay, so guaranteed. Now maybe they feel he's along the lines of some of those other linebackers they drafted late in the draft last year, a 5th or a 6th round guy, and even Quincy Williams with the ability to be a really good player on special teams. But we'll see. Also, they signed Bam Knight, who's also known by, I believe, his birth name, Zonovan Knight. And that was a running back from NC State. So here's another guy that is going to cause problems for Ty Johnson and Pirine, because Knight is a really good kick returner. Now, remember, Braxton Berrios is a premier punt returner / kick returner. I think he's what? What is he? What is he better of? Kick returner, Berrios, or punt returner?
Well, I think the kick return is what he took back for the touchdown last year, if I remember correctly.
So it'll be interesting because Zonovan Knight will fit one of those roles as well. And not only the fact that he's a good returner, but, big surprise, he's very good out of the backfield as far as a pass receiver, which you're going to have to be with this offense. So this is another guy that is going to, just taking a quick look at his bio or his write-up from Ourlads, just some major things. Unique prospect with the tools to be a contributor on offense and special teams. His margin of error, though, will be small. He was a first-team returner last season, all ACC. And it says he has flashes on tape to create optimism around his long-term potential. So this is just more than likely a guy that could very well end up on the practice squad, of course. But still, maybe a guy that can cause problems for the back end of that running back unit. And then the last guy to mention was C.J. Brewer from Coastal Carolina. The notes I have on Brewer, he was an All-American in 2020, 3rd-team All-American. That was 2 years ago. He was a first-team Sun Belt Conference this past season. He's got over 40 career starts in 5 seasons. 229 tackles, 32.5 tackles for loss, 16 sacks, and 5 forced fumbles. All of that is very good for an interior lineman. He's not a linebacker. He's an interior lineman. That's a lot of production from an interior lineman. He's also a leader, which is not surprising for Joe Douglas. So keep an eye on C.J. Brewer. Might be one of these guys, you see him on the practice squad, could develop later on down the road and maybe even compete against guys like, Nathan Shepard or Jonathan Marshall down the road.
Look, Douglas has always been aggressive in terms of bringing guys in. Where we talked a couple of years, Lawrence Cage, we both like, but he kind of suffered some injuries. So I also think what helps is players start to see opportunity, but players start to see a tide turning in locations, which hopefully may influence them in terms of joining a team. So we'll see what happens also with some of the free agents that are still out there on the marketplace. Maybe, the kind of draft the Jets had, the upside potential, the possible upside potential may swing some of those guys who might go elsewhere to view that they may have a role on the Jets in New York with guys who maybe would have not looked at us twice in the past. Maybe that starts to influence them in terms of signing with the Jets and fill some of these that we both just talked about that they have even after the draft.
All right. So, again, overall, it was an awesome draft. It is just, you can't say much else. The superlatives, you can pick any word you want. It was awesome with a capital A. And we just got to now, 2 things that have to happen now. Number 1, stay healthy. I don't care what Joe Douglas does, and I know he's talked about it. So he's got to fix things and make sure these guys can stay healthy. And then number 2, as you also mentioned at the top of the show, we must see the development of Zach Wilson. And
I have 3 keys. 1 is Wilson. He's number 1. 2 is Becton, right? Because he will solidify the offensive line if he's healthy. 3rd, he's talked about health. Let's see what Lawson, right? Lawson coming back from an Achilles. If Lawson can look like the player he did early in training camp last year, and when, in preseason, that defensive line becomes a heck of a lot more difficult to play against given the additions that they've made in the draft.
It'd be interesting to see how much they work Lawson.
I think they're going to be very smart and measured with, letting him incrementally get there, hopefully to peak right when the season starts.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I think
there's no need to rush him back.
I think once they see that he's back to being healthy and he just shows the glimmer of what he did last year, that's it. Snaps go down. Time to save his snaps for the regular season.
Yep.
And now that they've got the talent and depth around them, hopefully, and again, next step is guys like Jermaine Johnson and so forth. They would have to prove it on the field that they can help to take these snaps away from Lawson early during the season, and that should open things up for Quentin Williams. I don't if there's a healthy defensive line, it's time for Quentin Williams now. What is it? 5th year coming up. It's time for Quentin Williams to show that he could be a dominating defensive tackle in the NFL. So
yeah, well, we've seen snippets, right?
We have seen snippets. Correct.
We've seen glimpses. We've seen. Now it's a matter of him taking it and putting it all together. Which look, you look at what's around him now. Kind of hard to double team him all the time now.
Exactly. That's it. Now that's why I said if they're completely healthy, I don't want to see snippets anymore. Now I want to see domination. Again, We're not asking him to be Aaron Donald, but just be, a Pro Bowl, first team, all pro type of guy. All right, Jan.
Got it.
So the next time we talk will be who knows when, because you've got the rookie mini camp and then you have the other OTAs and mini camp. So, maybe sometime around there before they go quiet again and then, regroup for training camp.
Agreed. Looking forward to it. It's clearly the positive signs are there. It's a matter of hopefully all of this coalescing as we hope and seeing the gains that we expect to see this year.
We have a lot to talk about before the season begins when it comes to previewing the season and breaking down the depth chart and going over all sorts of other weird scenarios. And hopefully we won't be talking about injuries or anything like that like we have the last few years. And we can talk about 2022 as being the turning point of this franchise moving forward. So, Jan, we'll talk to you again sometime soon. And Ryan Dunleavy will join me, I believe, on Monday to take an overview look at the entire NFL draft and everything else going around in the NFL. So, for Jan Levine, I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you next time on Jets FM on the OFN.